Hello and welcome, Minnesota Farah. We are genuinely very happy to have you with us for our daily coverage of the NFL news. Please subscribe to our channel to support our initiative as we bring to you the latest updates from the world of NFL on a daily basis. Now let's dive deep into our news stories.
We're diving headfirst into the latest league updates. The NFL is always full of surprises, and this week is no exception. 1. Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are gearing up for Week 2, and there's some promising news on the injury front. RB/KR Cordarrelle Patterson, who missed the season opener with a thigh injury, is trending in the right direction. Additionally, cornerback Jeff Okudah, dealing with a foot issue, is also making progress. It's all systems go for the Falcons as they prepare for their next matchup. Now, let's move on to our next news. 2. Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens had a bittersweet victory in Week 1. While they secured the win against the Texans, it came at a cost. Running back J.K. Dobbins suffered a torn Achilles and is set for surgery, ending his season. Offensive tackle Ronnie Stanley and center Tyler Linderbaum are considered week to week with knee and ankle injuries, respectively. However, there's a glimmer of hope as cornerback Marlon Humphrey has a chance to return for their game against the Bengals, and safety Marcus Williams' pectoral injury, while significant, isn't season-ending. The Ravens are facing both challenges and opportunities as they navigate the early part of the season. Now, let's move on to our next news. 3. Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are getting ready for their season debut, and there's some noteworthy news. Safety Damar Hamlin is expected to be a healthy scratch for their game against the New York Jets. It's a strategic move by the Bills as they prepare for their first game of the season. Now, let's move on to our next news. 4. Carolina Panthers. The Panthers had a tough loss in Week 1, and they're dealing with some injury concerns. Cornerback J.C. Horn's hamstring injury is still being evaluated to determine its severity. This is a situation worth monitoring as Horn's presence in the lineup is crucial for the Panthers. On the brighter side, they've made some signings, adding offensive tackle David Sharp to the active roster from the practice squad and securing defensive end Chris Wormley and defensive back DiCaprio Bootle to their practice squad. The Panthers are making moves to strengthen their squad as they look to bounce back from their opening week defeat. Now, let's move on to our next news. 5. Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are looking to regroup after a Week 1 loss, and they've made a significant signing. They've added outside linebacker Dylan Cole to bolster their roster. The Bears are making moves to address their needs and aim to turn things around in the upcoming games. Now, let's move on to our next news. 6. Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are recovering from a challenging Week 1, and there's some injury news to report. Defensive end Joseph Ossai, who missed the season opener due to an ankle injury, is day-to-day, and his return will be critical for the Bengals' defense. The Bengals are hoping to bounce back in their next game against the Browns. Now, let's move on to our next news. 7. Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns secured a win in Week 1, but it came at a cost. Right tackle Jack Conklin suffered a torn ACL in Sunday's game, ending his season. It's a significant blow to the Browns, and they'll need to adjust their offensive line accordingly. The Browns are facing a new challenge as they aim to build on their early success. Now, let's move on to our next news. 8. Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos had a tough loss in Week 1, and they're dealing with some injury concerns. Tight end Greg Dulcich is set to have an MRI after a leg injury, and safety Caden Stearns is expected to be out for the entire 2023 season with a torn patellar tendon. These injuries will test the Broncos' depth as they strive to bounce back in the upcoming games. Now, let's move on to our next news. 9. Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers had a victorious start to the season, but they're dealing with a couple of injury concerns. Star running back Aaron Jones is still being evaluated for a hamstring injury, and linebacker Key Walker is in the concussion protocol. The Packers are keeping a close eye on these key players as they prepare for their next matchup. Now, let's move on to our next news. 10. Houston Texans. The Texans had a challenging start to the season, and they're monitoring the condition of safety Jalen Pitter. Pitter suffered a bruised lung in Sunday's game but has been released from the hospital and is in good spirits. The Texans are focusing on their players' well-being as they navigate a tough situation. Now, let's move on to our next news. 11. Indianapolis Colts. The Colts faced a tough loss in Week 1 and had some injury concerns of their own. Quarterback Anthony Richardson has knee and ankle soreness, but it seems to be precautionary as he could have returned to the game. Running back Evan Hull, on the other hand, could miss some time with a knee injury. The Colts are managing their injuries and preparing for the challenges ahead. Now, let's move on to our next news. 12. Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars had a victorious start to the season, but they're dealing with an injury to right guard Brandon Scherff. Scherff suffered an ankle sprain, and if he can't play in Week 2, Tyler Shatley will step in. The Jaguars are looking to maintain their momentum as they head into the next game. Now, let's move on to our next news. 13. Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have reached an agreement with defensive lineman Chris Jones on a new one-year deal, ending his holdout. This is excellent news for the Chiefs as they secure the services of a key player. However, tight end Travis Kelce's knee injury status for Week 2 remains uncertain. The Chiefs are preparing for their upcoming game with these factors in mind. Now, let's move on to our next news. 14. Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are dealing with an injury concern regarding wide receiver Jacoby Myers, who remains in the concussion protocol. The team is closely monitoring his progress. Additionally, they've made a practice squad signing, adding defensive end Jordan Willis to their roster. The Raiders are adapting to the challenges of the season as they strive for success. Now, let's move on to our next news. 15. Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are managing some injuries following their Week 1 loss. Center Garrett Bradbury, offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw, and linebacker Marcus Davenport are all day-to-day with various injuries. These players' availability will be crucial as the Vikings look to rebound in their next game. Now, let's move on to our next news. The NFL is always full of excitement and challenges, and it's shaping up to be an unforgettable season. Subscribe as we cover daily NFL content for you all here.